Hello, everyone. Welcome to ICAS Experts Voice Initiative Program. My name is Nong Hong. I am the Executive Director of the Institute for China-American Studies based here in Washington, D.C. The Experts Voice Initiative, in short, EVI, is a series of sit-down interviews with leading experts who address many of the key issues on U.S.-China relations and application for many of global affairs. Starting in January this year, we have launched a series of EVI with a focus on the Arctic. So our goal is to bring in experts from the 5 Arctic littoral states and also other stakeholders, nations, to share the research and also expertise on many of the issues on the Arctic. Follow our first episode of this Arctic series from a Canadian perspective. I am very delighted to host our second speaker, Dr. Zhao Long, who are going to provide insights from a Chinese perspective on these critical issues. Let me briefly introduce you. Dr. Zhao Long is the Deputy Director of the Institute for International Strategy and Security Studies, and he's also a Senior Research Fellow at the Shanghai Institute for International Studies. So, Dr. Zhao, it's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Why don't we start by, because this day when we're talking about Arctic, China as a non-Arctic state has come very often in this narration. Could you just let us know briefly what is China's policy or strategy on the Arctic?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me here. And I think from my observation, if we look at China's role in Arctic affairs, we could really follow the Chinese white paper on the Chinese Arctic policy, which issued in 2018, which China positioned itself or identity with so-called dual identities. The first one is China claimed that China is the geographically speaking the near Arctic state, which means China is closely related by the change in the Arctic climate system and also in biodiversity and environment. And secondly, China believed that it could play as the constructive partner, or so-called the stakeholder of the Arctic affairs, which means from Beijing's view, with the accelerated ice melting, it will create more opportunities for human activities and also create new possibilities and even challenges for the country like China, which mainly being regarded as the main participant into the global trade and shipping industry. So that being, China really paid more attention on what kind of opportunity that China could enjoy within those accelerated ice melting in the Arctic region, but also how to address those challenges, not only for a country like China, but also for the all humankind.
Thank you. I think that's quite comprehensive understanding China's policy on the Arctic. So moving to the China and U.S. relations in the Arctic, how would you categorize or feature what's the relationship between these two countries with a focus on the Arctic?
So I would characterize the collaboration interactions between China and the U.S. on the Arctic issue very positively, because during the latest, I think, more decades, two countries cooperate quite intensively, closely on the scientific programs in Arctic. And even though I think, as we know, in 2013, China being accepted as the observer to Arctic Council, which with support of United States as the member of Arctic Council. And also, I think we have quite regular track to dialogues, academic exchanges on what specific area that two countries could cooperate in the Arctic. Besides scientific agenda, I think there are also comprehensive discussion about economic aspect of this kind of cooperation in terms of Arctic shipping, in terms of the Arctic resources exploration, in particular in Alaska, state of Alaska. So I think in 2017, many Chinese companies showed their interest in the energy cooperation in Alaska. Even I think the memorandum was signed by the CNPC and many other American companies. So I think there's a huge potential for both countries to develop in the Arctic affairs, not only in the governance dimension, but also in the economic dimension and the scientific dimension.
Lately, we heard a lot about U.S. President Donald Trump's talking about like purchasing Greenland, and how is it perceived by, let's say, in China Academy, and how they perceive the U.S. intention, and whether any implication for, let's say, China's goal or presence in the Arctic, particularly in Greenland, please.
Oh, it's quite unfortunate from my perspective that the one of the reasons why President Trump claimed that the United States want to buy Greenland, it's because so-called the China threat or China challenges in the Arctic affairs. I think in general, with the so-called return of great power rivalry, in recent years in Arctic affairs, we've seen the very intensive so-called geopolitical competition. In particular, I think almost for decades, there is a commonly accepted narrative that the Arctic is some places as exceptional from those global power rivalries. But in nowadays, this narrative or concept somehow been diminished, and almost everybody are talking about how to engage or address those great power rivalry also in the Arctic. So I think this is one reason why China being perceived as so-called a challenge. But in fact, I don't think China has any geopolitical intentions, even the security concerns over the Arctic, because we are not an Arctic state. And we are among other Asian countries, we are only the observer of the Arctic Council. So I think the main driving forces for China's participation in Arctic affairs is, of course, the scientific agenda and even the economic-driven approach or cooperation. So in that sense, I think China would be more positive to be engaged with the United States and all Arctic states in more win-win oriented cooperation, rather than speculations about China's intention or China's role in those growing geopolitical rivalry. And in addition, I think China has shown that it has a capability to contribute in Arctic governance. So China, we have our own research station, so-called the Yellow River Station in Svalbard, and we annually sending our the special missions and experts of Xuelong to conduct scientific exploration in the Arctic areas and Arctic Ocean, and also we're trying to be more engaged within the Arctic Council framework. So that's why I believe that when President Trump mentioned that the United States is interested in exploration, the possibility of Arctic energy cooperation, I think China might be one of the participants in this broader framework of cooperation, rather than only fall within the scope of geopolitical rivalry.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's bring Russia into this picture of these trilateral relations. I think when we look at either Biden administration or Donald Trump's vision on the Arctic, I think the U.S. increasing its either investment or attention on its presence in the Arctic, partially also because it's worrying about the China-Russia cooperation. Could you tell us a little bit more in what sector that China and Russia has been conducted in terms of cooperation?
I think since the 2012, 2013, between China and Russia, we really launched comprehensive dialogue and discussions on the Arctic cooperation. And in particular, I think the business community really pioneered in such cooperation. We launched the LNG project in Yamal Peninsula, Russian. The COSCO shipping company has also launched the annual program of shipping along the Northern Sea Road. So I would say that the Sino-Russian cooperation in the Arctic was really based on the mutual beneficial framework and has produced a tangible result. But again, with those mentality of power politics, this kind of a cooperation be viewed by some of Arctic states as a challenge. But I would argue that China knows or insists that as the non-Arctic states, the only way that China could cooperate or participate in the Arctic affairs, one is of course through the multilateral framework like on the Council, and another we should cooperate with Arctic states like Russia, like United States and others. So I don't see here a contradictory or conflict of interest between our cooperation with Russia and our cooperation with Nordic states and with United States. But I have to admit that Russia as the largest Arctic states really enjoys the relative advantages in exploration of Arctic resources or the sustainable use of the Arctic. That's why, and again, Russia is our biggest neighbor. So I think this cooperation also fall within the overall structure of so-called strategic coordination partnership between China and Russia. And Arctic is a part of this mutual beneficial cooperation.
Thank you. Do you see any challenge when we talk about the China-Russia cooperation? Because I think the two countries, they're having different legal status in Arctic, and then their priority may be different. Like Russia, maybe, I'm not quite sure whether it's welcome external powers, a presence or investment in this region. Do you see any challenges between the two countries when they're talking about cooperation?
Well, I would say that one of the major challenge would be the external factors, because if you look at the specific areas and projects that China was involved in, the Yamal Peninsula, the LNG projects, or the shipping cooperation, was really come from the United States and other, let's say, the Arctic states, due to the geopolitical situation, in particular, the Ukraine crisis. So currently, some of Chinese companies are facing so-called threat by of the secondary sanctions imposed by certain countries. And of course, I think the shipping industry, the shipping cooperation also being held by the worries and challenges imposed of this geopolitical issue. But internally speaking, I don't see here the severe or substantial challenge between two countries, because I think the overall intention and the framework of our coordination on the Arctic affairs becoming more and more sufficient and more clear. The governments and all the different departments on the Arctic cooperation are more trying to offer the opportunities rather than stake on any specific areas of challenges and difficulties. So that's why I think based on the lead of our based on the regular meetings between our leaders, based on the well-established exchange mechanism between the different departments and even the companies, I think we have already reached and established very concrete plans for next 5 and 10 years of cooperation. So I see here more challenging part from the external factors rather than the internal problems.
Great. I think that China is pursuing bilateral relationship not only with Russia but also with all the other Arctic littoral states or members of the Arctic Council. Do you see any different approach taken by China when, say, develop relationship with Canada or with Finland, Iceland, etc.?
Well, I would be really cautious to acknowledge that some people arguing that China's Arctic cooperation is really limited to Russia. If you look at China's initiatives like Polar Silk Road, we always emphasize that China is in the interest and be more engaged with cooperation with all Arctic states. And we envision our shipping cooperation to through the Arctic Ocean and to connect two major markets, which the Asian market and the European market. So although the Northern Sea Route was the main part of the Northeast Passage, that's why, of course, we are trying to be more engaged with Russia on shipping roads and cooperation. But again, I think in terms of sustainability of those projects and inclusiveness, of course, Beijing is interested in more engagement with Nordic countries and with European countries. And speaking about scientific cooperation, we have long-lasting, successful cooperation with countries like Norway because we are operating our research stations in Svalbard, which is the sovereignty belongs to Norway. So I think there's many issues and topics that we could discuss with other Arctic states beside Russia. But again, I think the biggest challenge here or uncertainty here is how to avoid over-dominance of geopolitics and the security concerns over the our real mutual beneficial economic agenda.
Okay. Thank you. You mentioned about that we should not allow the geopolitical tension in the Arctic dominating the Arctic governance. So my question is related to the functionality of the Arctic Council at this moment, because of the Ukraine conflict, we see the pause of many of the working groups, etc., etc. So probably we're talking a lot about this U.S. new direction on the Ukraine conflict. I don't know whether you see any, like how the Arctic Council, the work and the functionality of Arctic Council will move forward on this topic.
Well, the good news is under the Norway's chairmanship, the Arctic Council successively conducted or finished the so-called the shift of chairmanship from Russia to Norway. They introduced quite innovative approaches and procedures, which I think China, as one of the observers, which really appreciated. And I think the whole framework and the mechanism being preserved by this innovative approach. But I think my concerns is how in the future to sustain this multilateral platform, because we know, as you mentioned, this is not only about the council itself, how to sustain from this so-called Ukraine crisis, but also the working groups, how to improve the sufficiency of all those projects, because as we know that many projects which involve Russian scientists or Russia's participation has been postponed somehow. So I think this may be the biggest challenge for the council itself, and to, on the one hand, of course, to ensure the fair and participation for all stakeholders, but on the other hand, not only by sustain the format of this platform, but also the productivity of this kind of cooperation. I think this may become the most challenging part of this. But I assume that within the so-called resumed dialogue between United States and Russia on Ukraine issue, if there will be possible solutions, even ceasefires in Ukraine, I think the overall trajectory of cooperation in the Arctic, in particular under the Arctic Council, will be more optimized and sustained.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very good conversation. Thank you, Dr. Zhao, for sitting together with me and walking us through a lot of key issues on China, the U.S., Russia, other Arctic states. So I appreciate very much your time with us.
Thank you.
And we hope to bring into this series Arctic EVI series with from like American, from Danish, from Norway perspective. So stay tuned with us.
Thank you.